The protagonist finds himself in a state of suffering, coughing incessantly on his home's balcony at night, while wondering about the reason for his condition. Lying in his bed, visibly ill and distressed, he questions in despair why all of this is happening specifically to him. While coughing, he reflects that although he doesn't consider himself an extraordinary person, he always strived and did his best in life. On his hand, a strange mark or wound is visible. He recalls a happy and fulfilled past, in which he worked hard, got married, had a baby on the way, and bought a house, achieving the milestones of a content life. However, this happiness was cut short when he found himself forced to work 2 jobs just to pay off a debt, a situation that led him to despair. The protagonist's life gets complicated with problems in his marriage, where his wife appears to be distancing herself while discussing their child's situation, asking to be met in the middle. The situation worsens dramatically at his job. He is summarily fired by his boss, who falsely accuses him of cheating on his wife and committing fraud against the company, despite his desperate pleas that he did nothing wrong. His troubles pile up when he is physically assaulted by a man demanding repayment for a loan. The protagonist insists he never borrowed any money, but his denials are met with violence. Broken down by the sequence of false accusations and betrayals, the protagonist falls to his knees in complete despair. He insists he is telling the truth, questioning why this series of misfortunes has happened to him. Following his collapse, the scene shifts. The protagonist appears disoriented, asking where he is and how this could have happened to him, suggesting a transition from his old life into a new, unknown reality. Lying in his bed, the protagonist reflects on his miserable life and wonders where he went wrong, when he is suddenly greeted by a mysterious voice. The voice belongs to a tall, elegant figure wearing a suit, a top hat, and a mask, who appears in his room holding a briefcase and remarks on the wonderful evening. Weak and confused, the protagonist can barely ask the shadowy figure who has appeared before him to identify himself. In a surreal vision, he sees his deceased pet dog and recalls the belief that you see your beloved pet before you die. He asks the figure if he is here to take him away, and the figure confirms it. The figure then clarifies his purpose. He is not there to take him up there, but will instead send him to another world, an offer that he warns is not what the protagonist is expecting. As the protagonist coughs, the masked being introduces himself as a guide. With a snap of his fingers, he prepares to show the protagonist the truth behind his ruin. The guide explains that the scene he is showing is not an illusion, but the cruel reality unfolding at that very moment. A revelation granted because the protagonist wished to know the truth. The vision shows his ex-wife dining with her lover, where she coldly admits that she not only pushed her debts onto the protagonist, but is also making him pay child support for a child that isn't his, justifying that women seek superior genes. The cruelty continues as the ex-wife and her lover mock the protagonist, saying he only had worth because he worked and handed over his salary, and that they wouldn't want an average child like him. As the protagonist reacts with fury to the betrayal, the guide restrains him. In a vision, his ex-wife seems to stare directly at him, blaming him for making her the person she is today, with a frightening smile. The protagonist reflects with bitter regret, realizing that if he had been more suspicious and given more thought to his wife's actions, he might have been able to avoid his tragic fate. The guide states directly to the protagonist that the root of all his suffering, paying for his ex-wife's debts and child support, was his own kindness, which was ultimately exploited. With a newfound look of fury and determination, the protagonist clenches his fist. He now understands that what his ex-wife and her lover did is a cruel and utterly unforgivable act. Changing the tone to a more cheerful one, the guide happily offers a present to the protagonist, showing him a stack of manuals that will seemingly aid him on his new journey. From the balcony, the guide makes the formal proposal, asking if the protagonist would like to reincarnate in another world. He expresses his wish for the protagonist to find the happiness he was denied, since his luck in this life was so poor. As he processes the reincarnation offer, the protagonist remembers his unfinished business. The guide then confirms his suspicions, revealing that his ex-boss framed him for fraud to cover up his own crimes. and that the protagonist was completely innocent. With this revelation, the protagonist's expression becomes hard and focused. He finally understands and admits to himself that he was just a stupid and ignorant human who was easily deceived by those he trusted. The guide continues to stoke his anger, showing him the image of his ex-wife enjoying a life of luxury while he is on his deathbed from overwork. He then directly asks if the protagonist is going to forgive them. Overcome with pain and rage, the protagonist bursts into tears and screams that he will never forgive them and that he wants revenge, to the guide's apparent satisfaction. The guide suggests he should give up on revenge, as his life is ending, and accept a happy second life as compensation. The protagonist fiercely refuses, declaring that no matter what happens to him, his only wish is for those who betrayed him to suffer the same fate. With tears of rage, the protagonist's determination solidifies. He declares that he will do anything, no matter the cost, to ensure his revenge happens. Seeing the protagonist crying in his bed, the guide attempts to console him, or perhaps ironically, promises that his next life will definitely be a happy one. The guide then presents the protagonist with a fan of options, explaining that while he cannot have his revenge, he does have the choice to decide what kind of world he will be reincarnated into. With complete indifference, the protagonist points to one of the options. The guide describes it as a fantasy world with both science and magic, intergalactic nations, and a longer lifespan, but the protagonist simply doesn't care. In his inner monologue, he decides that since he can't have revenge, he will go to the other extreme. In his next life, he will no longer give a damn about other people and will do whatever it takes to live a good, selfish life for himself. In a furious inner monologue, the protagonist completely rejects the idea that nice guys get a happy ending, calling it bullshit. He decides he will no longer be a good person and that his new goal is to be evil and trample over others. The guide reveals more about the new world. Despite being technologically advanced, it operates under a feudal system where the nobility holds power. He offers the protagonist the chance to reincarnate as a noble, born with a silver spoon. The protagonist embraces the idea, concluding that living earnestly is for fools. As a noble, he can do whatever he wants, and he decides he will become evil, accepting the position of a count to rule over a planet. Seeing him ready, the guide wishes him a happy life. With a cunning look, the guide watches the protagonist's transformation with satisfaction. He confirms to himself that he will proceed with the plan, stating that he is looking forward to it. With his final decision made and his body fading, the protagonist's last thought is of his new life as an evil lord, marking the end of his previous existence and the true beginning of his story. The guide bursts into maniacal laughter, mocking the protagonist's self-pity. He calls him an idiot, screaming that the idea of an unfortunate life is stupid and that there are countless people far worse off in the world. In a shocking twist, the guide confesses that he was the one who orchestrated all the misfortune in the protagonist's life. He admits he did it purely for his own amusement to see how far a person could fall. And since it was interesting, he decided to clean up the entree before the main course. The guide then addresses the vision of the ex-wife and her lover, announcing that they have had enough fun and that their roles in the charade have come to an end, as the protagonist watches from his bed. Back in the restaurant, the ex-wife's lover suddenly senses a terrifying presence. Panicked, he tries to end the date and flee, realizing they are in grave danger. The guide's voice speaks directly to the ex-wife, ending their lovey-dovey facade. As she panics and threatens him, he dismissively says he looks forward to seeing how far she will have fallen the next time they meet, sealing her fate. The ex-wife's lover, now terrified by the guide's presence, tries to push her away. He reveals that he also manipulated her and helped frame the protagonist for fraud, threatening to expose her if she doesn't leave him alone. In desperation, the ex-wife clings to her lover, who coldly rejects her, saying he wants nothing more to do with her. She cries, stating she did everything for him, but he only wants to save himself. With their relationship in ruins, the lover states that it was fun, but now he wants to move on, leaving her to raise the child on her own with the child support money. She is shocked, reminding him that he had declared his love for her. He insults her brutally, asking how she could be so stupid as to think he would marry a cheating bitch and that her ex-husband was blind to have loved her. The guide watches the scene, pleased with the reaction. The guide then intervenes, congratulating the lover on his cruelty and scolding the ex-wife for trying to play the victim when she was the one who had fun, making her ex-husband's life miserable. The guide's twisted form of justice has been served. The guide laughs at the irony of the situation, finding it amazing and scary that the ex-wife, after being abandoned, suddenly thinks about the ex-husband who loved her. He addresses the ex-wife in her despair, informing her that the protagonist's last wish was to take revenge on her and that the rest of her life will likely be miserable, leaving her to her grim fate. Turning his attention back to the protagonist, the guide announces it's time to do his job and guide his soul to a new world where human life is insignificant, thinking to himself how fun it will be when the protagonist realizes the truth too late. The guide reveals his true, monstrous intention. All of the protagonist's negative feelings, regret, hatred, lament, and anger will become his nourishment. He encourages him to become an evil lord and to hate him when misfortune arrives, because for the guide, it's time to have fun. With his task complete, the guide prepares to depart. He muses on how easy it is to trick the fools of this age with the promise of reincarnation. You just have to tell them what they want to hear. With a snap of his fingers, he is gone, sending the protagonist's soul to his new life. As the protagonist's soul departs for the new world, the guide reflects on how he's going to have his fun from now on, planning the next steps of his game. He considers his options, such as having the protagonist be born into a happy family destined for ruin, but dismisses the idea as having been done before. He decides the protagonist needs to start from a high place so his fall will be more fun to watch, and that he must not feel any gratitude towards him. With a sadistic grin, the guide expresses his desire for the game to end with torture and public execution, eagerly anticipating the hatred the protagonist will feel for him at the moment of his second death. The guide then watches the protagonist's soul float towards its new body, commenting that since his next life will be longer, he will get to live longer and, consequently, suffer more. With the reincarnation underway, the guide gives his final, twisted command to the sleeping protagonist: "Please suffer as much as you can for my sake." The protagonist awakens in a lavish and ornately decorated room, with flowing curtains and detailed furniture, realizing that he has indeed been granted a second chance at life, just as the mysterious guide had promised. Looking at himself, he finds that he has been reborn as a child. He then introduces himself with his new name, Liam Sarah Banfield, vaguely remembering that he was in the middle of playing before his consciousness shifted to this new body. Liam reflects on his new circumstance. He is now Liam Sarah Banfield, the heir of a Count's family that governs an entire planet within a vast interstellar empire, effectively granting him the power of a monarch over that world. With a cunning and malevolent grin, Liam realizes the limitless potential of his new position. He concludes that with so much power in his hands, he will finally be able to do whatever he wants, without the limitations of his previous life. Immediately, his thoughts turn to realizing his goal of becoming an evil lord. With a determined look and a mischievous smile, he contemplates whether forming a harem would be a good first step to consolidate his power and begin his reign of wickedness. Shortly after reincarnating, Liam finds a mysterious letter left by the guide. He reads it, confused by the terms support and representative, not understanding what they mean at the moment. He is then warmly greeted by his new parents, Cliff and Darcy Sarah Banfield. They call out to him affectionately, establishing the family unit in his new life. Time passes, and Liam celebrates his 5th birthday. His parents cheerfully congratulate him, marking an important and seemingly normal moment in his new childhood. On his birthday, however, Liam receives a shocking present from his father, a document that transfers all rights, territories, and the Count title of the Banfield family directly to him, making him the head of the family at just 5 years old. The reason, it turns out, is that his parents are effectively abandoning the indebted and troubled territory to live a life of luxury in the capital. As an additional birthday gift, his parents offer him a maid robot of his choice. Liam is astonished, beginning to suspect that this offer, along with the sudden transfer of power, might be the support the guide had mentioned in his enigmatic letter. Presented with a customization system to create his personal maid robot, Liam is instructed to freely choose the options and build a servant to his liking. Realizing he can customize every detail, including the skeleton and internal parts, Liam calculatingly decides to choose all the highest performance parts, since his neglectful parents are footing the bill. During the customization, he stumbles upon a sexual intimacy function, much to his father's amusement. Shocked, Liam begins to understand that this robot might be the representative the guide mentioned in the letter, a figure who would act on his behalf. Alone with his new, loyal servant, Liam reflects with admiration on the guide's actions. He realizes the guide's support was a master plan to get rid of his parents, who abandoned him with the territory's debts, and provide him with an ideal companion, praising how wonderfully it was all set up. The custom-built maid robot, named Amagi, is completed. His parents express their approval and depart for the capital, leaving Liam in her care. With this, Liam is effectively left in charge of his territory, with a powerful and loyal servant by his side, just as the guide had planned. Liam's parents explain that they have bought a mansion on the Empire's main planet and will be spending their time there. They ask him, as the new lord, to sign the document to formalize the power transfer and wish for him to become a wonderful ruler. While reviewing the document, Liam notes that since his parents are giving him everything, he will need to send them an annual allowance. He considers this a small price to pay to get them out of his way. With a confident posture, Liam reflects on the irony that his parents don't know their cute little boy is actually a reincarnated middle-aged man. He sarcastically pities them, as all their wealth and status are about to be stolen by a complete stranger. Focusing on the action, Liam holds the ornate pen and agrees to the terms. He decides the least he can do in return for everything is, in fact, send them their allowance, verbally sealing his side of the deal. As he signs the document, with his cheerfully ignorant parents in the background, his mind reveals his true, ruthless intention. He is planning on taking absolutely everything from them. With pen in hand and an evil grin, Liam declares that this is just the start. He is determined to commit many more evil deeds from now on, ending the chapter with his promise to become a true evil lord. The chapter opens with a history lesson, revealing that in the distant past, this world was ruled by a powerful artificial intelligence. However, humanity eventually rebelled against their mechanical rulers. They overthrew the AI, established an empire, and decreed that over-reliance on artificial intelligence would be taboo from then on. As time passed, avoiding the use of AI became common sense. The scene then shifts to Liam's parents traveling on their spaceship, where the father criticizes the mother for having given Liam an AI doll as a gift, something he deems improper for a mother. Liam's father expresses concern that people will speak ill of his son because of the gift. The mother coldly replies that she doesn't care, openly admitting she has no affection for Liam to begin with. She then clarifies that her real worry is potential complaints from the Empire, but she reassures her husband it will be fine, as territories changing hands has happened before, showing the normality of their neglect. The scene continues with Liam's parents on their spaceship, with his father rationalizing their decision to abandon their son and territory. He claims that any noble in the same situation would do the same, push their responsibilities and debts onto their children, and flee to the capital. Now in his new office, Liam sits in the Lord's chair. He reflects that, as the fifth head of the Banfield family, he has inherited everything, effectively making him the ruler of an entire planet. With a cup in hand, he smirks, thinking that while there are countless families like the Banfields in the Empire for his territory, he is not just a powerful figure, but a true king. A butler named Brian announces the arrival of the robot maid, Amagi. Liam, acknowledging that while he may be insignificant to the Empire, he is a king in his own domain, authoritatively orders her to be brought in. Seated on his throne, Liam commands the maid to be brought in. She enters, And with this act, Liam begins to exercise his newfound authority as the lord of that place. The maid robot formally introduces herself as Amagi, her master's loyal servant. With a flawless appearance and a calm presence, she bows before Liam, ready to begin her service. The butler, Brian, informs Liam that Amagi will be looking after him from that day forward, but notes that she requires maintenance once a week, much to Liam's surprise. Amagi clarifies that the regular maintenance should take no more than 2 hours and consists mainly of a body check and cleaning, which eases Liam's concerns about her being inactive for long. Liam reflects on the need for periodic checks to ensure that if any parts break, Amagi can be sent to the manufacturer for repairs. He then reaffirms his main goal to himself, to do what he wants without holding back. With a dramatic gesture and a determined look, Liam begins to give his first orders as Lord. His initial interaction with Amagi marks the first step on his journey to become an evil lord. As his first lordly action, Liam acts somewhat childishly and embarrassingly. He gets close to Amagi to test her softness, to the shock of his butler, Brian. Brian reprimands him, stating he mustn't do that in front of others. Asserting his authority, Liam retorts that he'll do whatever he wants and then changes the subject, demanding a report on the territory status. Brian promptly presents Liam with a vast amount of complex data, charts, and reports. Faced with the task of governing, Liam is completely lost, admitting to himself that this is troublesome as he doesn't understand any of it. He laments his situation. As a former salaryman, he has no idea how to govern a planet. Amagi, sensing his distress, offers her help, revealing she has a built-in advisor function to assist with managing the territory. Amagi then suggests a solution, that Liam enter an education capsule to learn. While he studies, she offers to look after the territory on his behalf, assuring him there will be no problems. The butler, Brian, vehemently protests the idea of letting an AI govern, stating it's a taboo act in the Empire. Amagi counters, clarifying that there is no strict rule against it, only a recommendation not to rely on them excessively. Amagi explains that her proposal is simply a suggestion to help her master, who currently lacks the necessary knowledge to govern his territory. She emphasizes that the final decision is not hers to make, but rather her master's. With this, she places the responsibility of the choice on Liam's shoulders. Liam is then shown the education capsule, a technology that instills knowledge directly into the brain and also enhances the body. He understands that it will take about half a year to learn what he needs, and that he will be in a state of hibernation during that time. Having weighed the options, Liam makes his decision. He instructs Brian to get the capsule ready and informs Amagi that he will leave the territory in her care while he is away. Amagi accepts the order, replying, "Yes, master." The butler, Brian, in desperation, pleads with Lord Liam not to proceed with the plan to leave the AI in charge. Liam confronts him with a cunning question. "Aren't you afraid of the thing I might do when I don't know anything?" With a determined expression, Liam insists that this must be done. Brian, defeated, finally relents and agrees to prepare the capsule, but not without first warning that the decision may turn into a scandal later on. Liam justifies his decision, stating he needs to use the capsule not only to strengthen his weak body, but also to learn how to oppress the citizens with taxes, a key step in his plan to become an evil lord. The scene shifts to a local bar, where news of the change in power is spreading. A patron overhears the conversation, indicating that the new lord's actions are already the subject of gossip among the common citizens. In the bar, the citizens express their pessimism. They complain that their new lord is just a brat and that a child can't possibly govern. They fear the handover of power will just be used as an excuse to raise their taxes even further. In the bar, a citizen recalls the painful past, mentioning that when the previous lord, Cliff, Liam's father, took power, he used the transition as an excuse to collect a crap load of tax, setting a precedent for distrust among the people. The conversation heats up as one of the patrons explodes in anger, questioning if the nobles see them as anything more than livestock. In contrast, his companions suggest they should at least have a little faith in the new, young lord. The more optimistic citizen continues, pondering that while the probability of Liam being a good ruler is close to zero, it isn't exactly zero, clinging to a sliver of hope that things might be different this time. The scene in the bar concludes with one of the citizens sighing in resignation, a sound that encapsulates the populace's feeling of helplessness and uncertainty about their new, unknown ruler. The narrative then jumps dramatically forward in time. A caption announces that 2 years have passed since Liam took over the territory. We see the butler, Brian, walking down a corridor, setting the stage to show the results of Liam's time in the education capsule, which, according to the anime synopsis, has now been completed. During the 2-year time skip, we see the butler, Brian, walking the mansion's halls. He observes the questionable decorations, commenting that the previous lord, Cliff, had a peculiar taste. Brian pauses before a portrait of Lord Alistair, Liam's great-grandfather, whom he fondly remembers as a benevolent ruler. He laments that, unfortunately, it all went downhill as soon as the new generation took over. His thoughts continue, detailing the family's decline. Lord Cliff couldn't control his lavish lifestyle, fell into debt, and ultimately pushed all responsibility onto his son, Liam, before fleeing to the capital. The scene jumps to the present, after Liam has emerged from the education capsule. Now visibly older, he confronts Brian and Amagi, demanding to know why he is stuck in this mansion. Brian explains that it has only been a few days since Liam got out of the capsule and advises him to stay inside the mansion for the time being. Liam, who is sitting at his desk, finally understands the reason for his confinement. Seated in his new lordly chair, Liam expresses his disgust for the mansion. He finds it awful, with strange, tasteless decorations everywhere. He complains that the mansion is hard to live in and that he feels embarrassed just being there, questioning who built it. The butler, Brian, tries to correct his language, suggesting the word original might be better than crazy. Liam declares his desire to change the entire mansion, or rather, to build a new one to his liking. Brian is relieved to see that the new lord has a normal sense of things. With the decision to build a new mansion, Liam states that all the current personnel will be fired, calling them a bunch of slackers. Both the butler Brian and the maid Amagi are shocked by the sudden decision. Amagi intervenes, advising Liam that he shouldn't rush into building a new mansion. She also suggests that they should perhaps offer the current staff an option of re-employment instead of summarily firing them. Amagi agrees with Liam's plan to demolish the current mansion, explaining that it would reduce operating costs. She warns, however, that planning and building a new mansion fit for him will take considerable time. Amagi then suggests preparing a suitable place for Liam to stay while the new mansion is being built. Liam agrees, stating that since it will be his mansion, he wants to take the time to build it properly. When discussing funding for the new mansion, Liam is surprised to learn that his territory possesses a fleet of 30,000 battleships. Amagi proposes reorganizing the fleet to raise the necessary funds. Amagi details the fleet's condition, revealing that only 20% of the ships are operational. She suggests that reducing the fleet to a minimum of 3,000 ships would drastically reduce expenses. The butler, Brian, vehemently objects to Amagi's suggestion. He frantically explains that the Empire's recommendation is for a count to maintain a fleet of at least 10,000 ships. Liam dismisses Brian's concern about the 10,000 ship recommendation, pointing out that only 20% of the fleet is in use. Brian retorts that the issue isn't utility, but that such a drastic reduction will cause them to be looked down upon by other nobles. Brian raises another objection, warning that a weakened fleet will not only draw the scorn of other nobles, but will also make them a vulnerable target for space pirate attacks. Amagi analyzes the pirate threat, concluding that a force of 1,000 ships would be sufficient for defense. She then points out a more severe problem. Their armaments are outdated and their combat personnel are rusty, suggesting the recruitment of more skilled personnel. After hearing the arguments, Liam makes a ruthless decision. He declares that he has no need for useless subordinates and orders all non-essential ones to be discharged, much to Brian's shock. Liam finalizes the discussion, agreeing with Amaji's proposed reorganization. He states that keeping 20,000 unused spaceships as decoration is just stupid, and proceeds with the plan, confident they will have enough funds afterward. Brian continues to plead with Lord Liam, warning him that his over-reliance on the AI, Amagi, will cause the other noble houses to look down upon the Banfield family name. Liam sharply silences him, telling Brian to keep his useless opinions to himself, as the Banfield name has already fallen into disgrace. However, he concedes that a small fleet might be a problem later on and plans to gradually increase their number over time. Addressing Brian, Liam offers a compromise. He asks him to bear with a fleet of 3,000 ships for now, but promises that he will eventually increase the number back to 30,000, addressing Brian's concern for their reputation. Liam then gives his final orders to Amagi. He tasks her with the reorganization, but specifies that she is to create a fleet fitting for him, not a generic fleet for account, as he only requires what is necessary and not for show. Amagi assures Brian that they will eventually have a magnificent fleet. Hearing Liam's logic and long-term planning, Brian is surprised and realizes that his young master is actually giving the matter serious thought. Following Liam's decision about the fleet, Brian formally withdraws his objections. He is impressed by his young master's decisiveness, which reminds him of the great Lord Alistair, his great-grandfather. With the serious matters settled, Liam's childish side resurfaces. He cheerfully asks Amagi for a hug, and she, as his loyal servant, calmly agrees. The interaction becomes a bit too intimate for the butler. Brian gets extremely flustered, pleading with Liam not to fondle Amagi so boldly in front of him. After reviewing the state of his new domain, Liam's frustration grows. He complains that the more he finds out about the territory, the worse the situation appears to be. The severity of the situation is shown comically. Amagi, tasked with helping Liam become an evil lord, panics when she realizes the territory is in such a bad state that there is nothing she can exploit to further oppress the people. Liam explodes with frustration upon realizing the terrible condition of his territory. He rants that even though he's in the space age, his domain seems stuck in the Middle Ages, with citizens already so overtaxed that his plan to oppress them as an evil lord is impossible because there is nothing left to exploit. He angrily asks why his predecessors didn't develop the place. Amagi explains that from the nobility's point of view, it was simply easier to let the people fend for themselves, resulting in the territory's slow, natural development. Liam argues that they could have just used an AI to manage the development, but Amagi reminds him that while they do use AI, there's a rule against over-relying on it, which prevented such a solution. The truth finally hits him. Liam understands that his parents pushed this terrible territory onto him because they didn't want it anymore, which leads him to question if he was ultimately tricked by the guide. Amagi confirms the territory's dreadful state, but offers a glimmer of hope. She believes that if they utilize the tax money properly, the situation can vastly improve over the next 10 to 20 years. The manga provides context on the lifespans in this new world. Adulthood is at age 50, and people live for hundreds of years. With this in mind, Liam contemplates Amagi's statement that it will take 20 years to improve the territory. Considering his new, long lifespan, he accepts this timeline. Having accepted the long-term plan, Liam allocates the funds for the territory's development, vowing to recover the investment later. He then declares to Amagi that he desires more power. Amagi initially misunderstands his desire, thinking of military might like the fleet. Liam corrects her, explaining that he seeks individual power, combat skills like martial arts, to become personally stronger. A flashback reveals Liam's motivation. In his past life, he was weak and fearful, unable to stand up to debt collectors. He resolves that in this life, he must become strong enough not only to stand tall, but also to trample on others. Following through on his desire to become stronger, Liam orders Amagi to find him a mentor for martial arts training. He insists that she find the best one possible, regardless of the cost, as he considers this an absolute necessity. With a clenched fist, Liam solidifies his new life philosophy. He vows that he will never again let others take from him. Instead, he will be the one who takes everything from them, and for that, he needs more power. The scene cuts to the guide, who is observing Liam's ex-wife from afar. He remarks with satisfaction on her haggard and worn-down appearance. A close-up confirms the guide's observation. Liam's ex-wife is visibly in a bad state, with messy hair and cheap, worn-out clothes, showing how far she has fallen. The guide continues to watch various scenes of the ex-wife's new, miserable life, relishing her suffering. This fulfills his earlier promise that she would meet an unhappy fate. The scene cuts to the guide who, after lazing around for a moment, decides it's time to check on how his boy Liam is doing in his new world. Upon observing Liam with Amagi, the guide deduces the reason for his reliance on the robot. His past trauma prevents him from trusting a real woman. The guide finds this reasoning ridiculous. The guide continues to mock Liam's motivation, seeing his desire for power as a simplistic reaction to the fear of having things taken from him, calling him a simpleton. He finds Liam's situation interesting because the boy still hasn't grasped what it truly means to be a noble. Therefore, the guide decides he will toy with him for a longer time. As part of his aftercare policy, and in response to Liam's wish for a mentor, the guide decides to intervene. He declares that he will send Liam someone with exceptional talent, a mysterious swordsman, to continue his sadistic game. The scene cuts to Liam embracing Amagi. The guide, observing this, says, "I hope you'll like my present." This confirms that Amagi, in a situation that brought her to Liam, was orchestrated by the guide as a present for his game. In a final panel, the guide makes a sinister promise to the protagonist. He states that when Liam meets his own demise in the future, the guide himself shall be coming for him, implying that his interest in Liam's suffering and life is a cycle he intends to continue. The scene introduces a new character, Yasushi, who has just arrived at the Banfield Territory spaceport. He complains about the remote planet and reveals that he only took the job as an instructor because of a debt, lamenting his bad luck. In his thoughts, Yasushi reveals his true nature. He is a con artist. He plans to trick his new client, a kid, and wonders if he will be an easy mark, feeling a fake sense of pity for the boy who will learn martial arts from a fraud. Yasushi prepares for the meeting, intending to pull a rug under this kid and get some good money. He mentions that he brought a sword, a rare weapon, because he heard his client wanted to learn swordsmanship, seeing it as an opportunity for his scam. The scene shifts to a barren and desolate field, with mounds of hay or dirt in the background. Liam and Amagi stand on one side as Yasushi approaches from the other, setting the stage for the first meeting between master and student. Yasushi formally addresses Lord Liam. The young lord, with a serious and somewhat surprised expression, responds with a simple yes, marking the beginning of his training in Yasushi's attempted con. Yasushi begins his lesson with a fake confidence, telling a smiling Liam not to be nervous as he will start with a demonstration of his sword style. To avoid having to show any real skill, Yasushi claims that the ultimate technique of his style is a lethal art and that, because it is so dangerous, it's not something he can carelessly demonstrate. Pretending to concede to Liam's request to see his abilities, Yasushi says he will make a special, one-time exception to demonstrate his supposed prowess. To ensure there are no witnesses to his fraud, Yasushi sets a condition. He demands that there be no other observers besides Liam and asks him to send his maid, Amagi, away. Amagi firmly refuses to leave her master's side. Though she apologizes for her apparent rudeness, she declares that Liam's safety and well-being are her top priority and that she will not leave him alone with Yasushi. Yasushi turns the tables, pretending Amagi's disobedience is a test. He says he cannot accept the job if Liam can't control his own maid. Liam, instead of seeing the manipulation, is impressed by Yasushi's calm and believes he's the real deal. Completely convinced by Yasushi's act, Liam's enthusiasm grows. With his eyes sparkling with admiration, he declares with conviction that he wants to learn from this man. Now determined, Liam exerts his lordly authority and gives Amagi a direct order to leave them alone. Amagi complies, but asks to be called if anything should happen. As she leaves, Amagi secretly hands Liam a small device. She warns him that there are many swindlers who pose as swordsmen and instructs him to use the gadget to verify Yasushi's authenticity. Amagi explains that the device will detect if any tricks are used during the demonstration. While Yasushi, confident as Khan, sees no problem, Amagi gives Liam one last warning not to let his guard down. To begin the demonstration, Yasushi, as part of his con, instructs Liam to place a large log anywhere he likes, even somewhere his blade supposedly couldn't reach, to prove his skill. Liam complies, and Yasushi prepares himself before several logs that have been arranged on the training field, setting the stage for his ultimate technique. Yasushi builds the hype, describing his technique as the very peak of the Isen style. He claims it's a skill comparable to magic, and that all training leads to this single, powerful move. Yasushi finally draws his sword to perform Isen Flash. The move is so fast that a slash is heard, but Liam sees nothing, confusedly asking his master what happened. The result of the technique is revealed. The distant log is perfectly sliced in two. Liam is left absolutely stunned and amazed, now thoroughly convinced that Yasushi is a master of unbelievable power. After his impressive demonstration, Yasushi confidently presents himself as a master, having shown what he calls the ultimate technique of the Isen style. Liam, amazed, asks when exactly he cut the logs. Yasushi deflects the question, saying the answer will come with training, and prepares to make his pitch. Yasushi formally asks Liam if he wishes to learn the Isen style. Completely convinced of Yasushi's power, Liam enthusiastically agrees with a resounding yes. Yasushi's thoughts reveal his contempt. He mocks Liam for being easy to trick and plans to extract as much money as possible from the noble, whom he considers rotten and an amateur at swordsmanship. The secret to the trick is revealed in Yasushi's monologue. As a former street hustler, he used sleight of hand and pre-cut logs. He is surprised and relieved that he wasn't caught by the detection device Liam was holding. It's revealed why Yasushi's con worked. Amagi's detection device can only identify advanced trickery tools, not primitive tricks like sleight of hand. Yasushi, unaware of this, simply assumes the gadget must have been broken. With Liam's trust fully won, the training officially begins. Yasushi declares that they will start with the basics, and an eager Liam responds with a resounding, "Yes, master." The narrative jumps forward 3 years. A visibly older and more skilled Liam is shown in the middle of intense sword training, indicating that he has been practicing diligently. It's shown that Yasushi, the master, actually learns what to teach by watching tutorial videos while relaxing. He is impressed with how quickly Liam learns and looks up proverbs to sound wise. In an inner monologue, Yasushi expresses his surprise. Despite the many bad rumors he'd heard about the Banfield house, he notes that the brat, Liam, seems to be living quite modestly, which contradicts their reputation. The scene takes place during Liam's training. Yasushi, who expected the young lord to slack off, is surprised to note that the brat is pretty hardworking. While relaxing with drinks and sweets, Yasushi reflects that although Liam treats him well, he sees no point in a noble becoming stronger, since they can just have subordinates protect them. Yasushi continues to enjoy his cushy job, watching Liam train while Amagi serves him. He wonders why Liam keeps that doll, Amagi, around, but concludes that he needs to be careful, as she is always keeping tabs on him. As he lies on a lounge chair, Yasushi thinks about how the nobles are beyond help for making a child inherit all the responsibilities. He feels a bit bad for Liam, who inherited the debts, especially since he himself is mooching off the kid without doing anything useful. Yasushi starts to worry. He realizes that Liam is a serious type who probably hates corruption. He fears that if Liam discovers the truth about his fraud, it won't end well for him. Liam discusses the details of his training with Amagi. She informs him that his session in the education capsule will take about half a year, and he asks when he should begin. He explains his reasoning for the haste, stating that the education capsule contains so much knowledge that even decades wouldn't be enough to absorb everything. Therefore, he wants to make as much use of it as possible before becoming an adult. Before beginning his training, Liam formally entrusts Amagi with the care of his territory. In turn, she presents him with some final data on a screen for his review. After a period of time, a brand new mansion is completed. Liam observes the new residence with approval, stating it is much better than the last one. Now residing in the new mansion, which he appreciates for its simplicity and high ceilings, Amagi reminds him that it is almost time for him to enter the education capsule again, showing that his training is an ongoing process. The scene opens with an older Liam reviewing files. With a serious and annoyed expression, he gives his first order as a ruler. Bring me the person who submitted this file. A sycophantic, overweight official is brought before Liam. He attempts to downplay the file's data, claiming the numbers might be misleading and that the expenses were necessary for his job. Amagi, holding a data slate, confirms Liam's suspicions. She reports that she has confirmed the official's embezzlement, which hindered the territory's development, and that she is investigating other crimes. As the official smiles, oblivious to the danger, Liam's inner monologue shows his disgust. He sees him as a cliché, corrupt official, guilty of bribery, embezzlement, and interfering with HR. As he continues to look over the data presented by Amagi, Liam is shocked at the depth of the corruption, thinking, what else? The official in the background remains smugly unaware. In a panic, the corrupt official desperately tries to defend himself, claiming that AIs like Amagi are the true enemies of humanity and that Liam mustn't be deceived by them. The official continues his attempt at manipulation, justifying his crimes as offenses that all nobles commit to keep the system running smoothly, something Adal couldn't possibly comprehend. Liam interrupts him, asking how he felt when he executed his own subordinates after pinning his crime of embezzlement on them. The official, sweating, is left speechless. The corrupt official then sarcastically asks if Liam had fun killing his subordinates, trying to deflect the blame. With his sword at the official's throat, Liam turns the question back on him. Was it fun making someone else suffer for your own crime? The official, defeated, can only curse the young lord. In a last-ditch effort, the corrupt official tries to assert his value, shouting that it is only because of his support that Liam can live comfortably. The official's words remind Liam of his old boss from his past life, who also betrayed him. Enraged by the similarity, Liam violently executes him with his sword, shouting at him to shut your dirty mouth. Immediately after the execution, the official's remains are covered in a bubbling foam, sprayed by another servant to clean up the mess. Liam and Amagi get splattered in the process. With the deed done, a calmer Liam, still covered in the foam, steps over the remains of the corrupt official. Amagi approaches her master with a concerned expression. She asks him if he is all right after the violent confrontation. After the execution, a furious Liam declares that the corrupt official talked big for someone who leeched off of him. He orders Amagi to look through everything and vows to execute all the corrupt bastards. Amagi kneels before Liam, gently asking him to let go of the sword, trying to calm him down after his burst of rage and violence. With his hand still on the sword, Liam's rage dissipates and gives way to confusion. He looks bewildered by what he has just done, as if snapping out of a trance. Seeing her master's confusion, Amagi offers to help him navigate the complex situation, calmly stating, "Allow me to help you." Amagi immediately provides counsel, warning that there are many similar cases of corruption. She explains that executing all of them indiscriminately will create many problems, and confirms that there are indeed many other corrupt officials. As the cleanup crew removes the executed official's body, Amagi explains to Liam that the problem with corrupt officials is a long-standing one. She mentions that while she could take over their duties, that would also create problems, leading Liam to ask what the solution is. Sitting on Amagi's lap, Liam listens to her suggestion to acquire surveillance AIS. She explains that while they're not as advanced as she is, they're very effective for monitoring things, and Liam asks how many units they will need. Amagi calculates that, at a minimum, they will need about 30 units for the mansion. She adds that the rest can be distributed throughout the territory to oversee operations, and that there shouldn't be any problem ordering these smaller units. Amagi warns him, asking if he is sure, as relying too much on AI could lead to unpleasant rumors. Liam, indifferent, tells her to do as she wishes, as he doesn't care what others think. As the official's body is carried away, Liam looks at Amagi and declares his final decision, stating, "I trust you more than them." This solidifies his choice to use technology and Amagi's loyalty to combat the human corruption in his domain. After deciding to use surveillance AIS, Liam reaffirms his stance. He tells Amagi that he doesn't need anyone who will go against him, showing his determination to follow his own path, even if it's that of an evil lord. Amagi, as his loyal servant, accepts his decision without question. She replies, "Yes, master. I will start making the arrangements shortly," and begins to implement Liam's plan for territory-wide surveillance. The scene then shifts to a tavern at night, where news of Liam's actions has begun to spread. At a table, one man tells his friend the rumor he's heard. The new lord, despite being just a little kid, has killed a corrupted official. His friend reacts with disbelief. The man who spread the rumor insists that it's true. When asked how he knows, he reveals he has a source. He knows someone who works as a cleaner in the government office, who told him the story. The scene returns to the bar, where a patron discusses the news with the bartender. He points out that the government is increasing the years of compulsory education from 3 to 6 and is in a hurry to build more schools. Other patrons in the bar comment on the news. They note that the construction workers will be busy for a while, which is good for the economy, while another man wishes he could get that lucky. One of the citizens looks at a data slate showing an image of their 10-year-old lord, Liam. He remarks that Liam seems to be a magnanimous person and that he couldn't have predicted such an improvement over the last 5 years. The chapter ends on a peaceful night scene. One person expresses hope that things will continue to improve, and another agrees, closing the chapter on a note of optimism for the territory's future. The scene opens with the butler Brian addressing a group of new staff members. He reassures them that Lord Liam is very forgiving of those who take their work seriously and expresses relief at finally having dedicated employees. One of the new maids asks Brian if Master Liam will require nightly duties, implying services of an intimate nature. Brian, taken aback, addresses her question. He assures the new maid that she needn't worry about nightly duties, as Master Liam is still young. He also mentions that Amagi, the doll, takes care of most of his personal needs, meaning she won't have to be around him much. Brian, however, is angered by the maid's insinuation about Amagi. He sternly warns her, stating that he will pretend he didn't hear the disrespectful comment this time, but that there won't be a next time. In an inner monologue, Brian laments the situation. He acknowledges that Amagi is capable, but her presence and the trust Liam places in her could ruin the master's reputation. However, he concludes that seeing how much Liam trusts her, it's impossible to separate the two. The butler Brian continues to scold the new maids, warning them to never disrespect Amagi, as she is very special to Master Liam. He cautions them that if Liam were to find out about such behavior, he would not be able to protect them from his wrath. It is shown that Liam's reliance on Amagi is deep and foundational. He relied on her in the same way a child relies on his mother, establishing the basis of their relationship. The scene cuts to Brian looking out a window, reflecting on the progress. He feels optimistic, believing that things are definitely getting better and that under Master Liam, House Banfield will be able to regain its former glory. The narrative then jumps 20 years into the future. A now 30-year-old Liam is seen on a training ground, looking disappointed with his progress in swordsmanship, indicating he is yet to reach the level he desires. Liam voices his frustration aloud, in disbelief that even after more than 20 years of practice, he can only produce a weak imitation of his master's technique. He questions if he simply lacks talent, as he only managed to cut 2 out of 3 logs, and even those were cut imperfectly. The scene opens with Liam, now 30 years old, apologizing to his master, Yasushi, for his skills still being lacking. Yasushi reassures him, stating that the path of the sword is a long one, but acknowledges that Liam has improved greatly in the last 20 years. In an inner monologue, Liam reflects on his training. He repeated the basics, trained his body, and refined his technique, but he still couldn't master the final move. It was then that he recalled another component his master had mentioned long ago. Yasushi reveals the secret to his Isen flash technique. It utilizes magic to enhance martial prowess. Liam, who had never considered magic, is taken by surprise. Yasushi explains that by applying a thin layer of it to the blade, one can extend the reach of the sword. He tells Liam that he is incredibly close to mastering the technique, but is still missing the final piece. It's explained that magical abilities aren't considered important in this world, as they are ineffective against weapons like guns or spaceships. However, to master the Isen style, the study of magic is essential. The scene opens with an explanation of magic in the Empire. While attack magic is useless, healing and auxiliary magic are important, especially for controlling humanoid weapons, as one must learn to pilot them using magic. Realizing the need for magic for his sword technique, Liam becomes frustrated that just learning the basics isn't enough. He decides that he will increase the intensity of his magic lessons. Yasushi, his master, instructs Liam to take a break from his unique skill to concentrate solely on magic. He estimates that 10 years of practicing the basics should be enough, much to the dismay of Liam, who thought he was making good progress. Yasushi then asks Liam about the state of his territory, noting that he can't become a good lord if he spends all his time practicing martial arts. Liam replies that the restructuring of the government and military has been going well, and that he has started new projects. In a flashback, Liam is amazed at the rapid development of his territory, where skyscrapers can be built in days with 3D printers and UFOs, spaceships, are a common sight. The scene opens with Liam's inner monologue, where he expresses his determination to raise tax revenue in a way his parents and grandparents never did. He seems puzzled as to why they never took such obvious steps to enrich themselves. Yasushi, his master, tells Liam that he is ready for the next stage of his training. He decides that to make things more challenging, Liam will now train blindfolded and with added weights. Liam is confused by the idea of a blindfold and weights. Yasushi explains that the purpose of the blindfold is to teach him not to rely solely on his eyes, and the weights are so he will swing the sword until it feels as light as a branch. Despite the bizarre training, Liam accepts with enthusiasm. He thinks it's like something out of a manga, which he enjoyed reading as a kid, and now he's excited to experience it. In an inner monologue, Yasushi is completely shocked and terrified. He never thought that Liam would be able to take his fake swordplay, which was just a con, and recreate it as a genuine and effective sword technique through sheer effort and talent. The scene opens with Yasushi's inner monologue, where he is panicking. He only taught Liam the basics, yet the boy grew stronger than him in the blink of an eye, perhaps because he's a genius. He fears what will happen if Liam, who purged every single corrupt official from his domain, finds out that he is a fraud. Sweating, Yasushi regrets having wasted his money and decides he needs to drag out the con for as long as possible to save up more money and get away before Liam discovers his scam. The narrative then jumps a few years later. A blindfolded Liam excitedly informs his master that he is starting to figure out how to use his other senses to fight. Liam demonstrates his newfound skill, swinging the weighted, blindfolded sword with incredible ease and power, creating an energy vortex. He proudly shouts for his master to look at his progress. He eagerly asks if this is what Yasushi meant by not relying on my eyes. Yasushi is left completely shocked and speechless, stammering in disbelief at how Liam could have mastered the technique in such a short time. The scene opens with Yasushi trying to hide his panic after Liam's demonstration. He praises him for sharpening his other senses but tries to downplay his achievement, saying that's all you've done and that he hasn't made them extraordinary yet. Liam, however, is excited by the prospect. He realizes that if he can already do this much, there are even more things he can achieve without relying on his eyes, showing his enthusiasm to continue training. Yasushi promises Liam that since his current sword is too light, he will prepare a special sword for him. Liam is happy to hear this and says he's looking forward to it, unaware that this is just another one of Yasushi's tricks. The scene cuts to Yasushi in a panic inside the House Banfield storehouse. He exclaims, "You gotta be kidding me," likely shocked at the vast wealth or resources the family possesses. In an inner monologue, Yasushi despairs. He realizes Liam is a genius who adapts too quickly, and to make matters worse, all the treasures he could sell are fakes. In a panic, he decides to create a super heavy sword to give to Liam, hoping it will slow him down and buy him time to plan his escape. In the middle of his panic about Liam's talent, Yasushi gets what he believes is a better idea. His gaze falls upon a large, old model of a mobile knight, mecha, seeing it as a new opportunity for his con. Acting on his new plan, Yasushi points to the outdated mecha and orders Amagi to make it usable, declaring that he will use that specific machine to train Liam. Amagi immediately voices her concern over the choice. She notes that the model is quite old and logically suggests that it would be better to provide her master with the latest, more advanced model instead. A technician adds details, explaining that the old 24-meter class model is no longer in production, making repairs time-consuming. He recommends using the more common 14 or 18-meter models. Yasushi's inner monologue reveals his desperate motive. He knows the newer models are easy to pilot and wouldn't delay Liam for long. To buy more time to flee, he insists that the difficult, old mecha be repaired for Lord Liam's sake. The scene opens with Yasushi's inner monologue, where he justifies his choice of the old mecha. He believes that old models were more sturdily built, and that by making them spend a fortune on it, they'll have less cash to chase him down with later. Yasushi then argues his choice out loud, insisting that Amagi should turn the old craft into the ultimate model for Liam, without worrying about the money. Amagi replies that it's not so simple, and that it would be more economical to make use of a current model. Amagi continues her argument, stating that there is no logic in using the old craft, as it would be cheaper to simply customize a newer unit for the master's use. Despite Amagi's logic, Yasushi insists that they make adjustments to the old unit, claiming it will be better for Lord Liam. In his delusion, Yasushi reveals his twisted logic. People are too dependent on the assist functions of the latest models. He believes Liam must use a machine that requires actual skill and learn to maneuver it manually, with automatic controls being out of the question. The scene opens with the debate over the mecha. A maid questions why they can't just rely on a weapon's functions, but Yasushi insists it's something Lord Liam needs to learn for himself. He tells Amagi to proceed with the arrangements, encouraging her to use as much money as needed, as it's all for Liam's sake. While Liam trains, Amagi has her suspicions about Yasushi. She wonders if he is truly a sword master, noting that while her master has gotten stronger, Yasushi doesn't seem impressive. She also notes that his history is unnaturally clean, as if the records were manipulated. Amagi begins researching the old mecha that Yasushi chose, planning to carry out his orders. However, she runs into a problem. The mecha was manufactured by the Empire factory, and she's not sure if they have enough funds for the restoration project. Determined, Amagi visits the old mecha. With a resolute expression, she vows that she will do everything she can to restore it, asking the machine to please protect her master Liam in return. The final scene shows an adult Liam in his new mansion. He hears approaching footsteps and recognizes them as Amagi's, who confirms her presence as she enters the room. The scene opens with Liam continuing his training, walking around blindfolded. Amagi expresses concern for his safety, but he dismisses it, saying it's part of his training. She then brings up the old mobile knight he ordered to be repaired, even though a newer model would be more affordable. A wide, atmospheric shot shows Liam and Amagi walking away from the Grand Mansion, highlighting the solitary nature of his training and their unique relationship against the backdrop of his domain. The scene then shifts to a bustling bar in the territory, showing the positive effects of Liam's rule. The bar owner celebrates with patrons because business is booming, so much so that he was finally able to hire new help. In another part of the bar, citizens reflect on the rapid changes. They marvel at how much things have improved under the new lord, noting that the territory was more developed hundreds of years ago in their grandparents' era, highlighting the long decline that is now being reversed. A man, holding his head, complains that he is too busy due to the economic upturn. His friend, however, replies, "Good for you," showing that being overworked has become a welcome sign of prosperity in the revitalized territory. The scene opens with an older, blindfolded Liam continuing his training. He decides to take a walk around the mansion, leaving matters to Amagi, confident that his master must have his reasons. The scene shifts to the local bar, where the citizens are overjoyed with the booming economy. The bartender, now surrounded by patrons, is beaming, saying that he couldn't be happier as long as business is this good. The conversation among the patrons reveals the public's perception of Liam. They comment that the Lord has been quiet for the last 20 years and that he seems to really like dolls, like Amagi, unlike other nobles who hate them.